Well, g'day everyone and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, it's pretty cold and miserable here. So we're getting to the time of year where it's time to start harvesting the tuberous crops. And today we're going to do the Yacon. They've died down a fair bit. The ones up this end are still going good. You actually want to harvest Yacon before frost. I may or may not get frost. So, you know, it's the weather that I get here. Chances are I will get a frost, but nothing major. So frost isn't really the issue for me, but if you live in a frost area, you want to harvest them before the frost. So as you can see, they started to die down a fair bit, so I'll at least pull the back bag and see how that's gone. These other ones have probably got a bit more life in them, but if the back one comes out good, then I'll keep going. And then just for an idea of timing, as you can see, my turmeric and ginger starting to die down. Ocker's still going strong. That's happy to live through a frost. That'll actually help to sweeten the tubers on it. Sweet potato is still in flower. So that gives you an idea of when you're going to be harvesting. It's going to be one of the early ones out of the tuberous crops. We'll put it up in the barrow just to make it nice and easy. Had to cut one of the stalks free just to get it the plant free. As you can see, it's a reed type growth. It's hollow on the inside. It's got nodules along the length of it. So yeah, nice little plant. I will throw the stalks out to the chickens. They're not huge fans of it, but it gives them something in this time of year. All right, we're going to cut everything off just above the ground. Okay, so we just loosen the soil up just to make everything come out a bit easier. These can be a bit brittle, so you don't just want to turn the bag over and pound it. They have a large water content in them, and that tends to make the tubers very brittle. There we go, nice and gentle. You can see there where we've got a snap off between the sprouting tubers. That's fine. With these we have two different types of tuber. We have this top red coloured tuber, and that's the sprouting tuber. And then we have the brown tubers here, which are the actual tubers that you eat. So I'll just clip those ones off. There's our sprouting tuber, which we'll put aside. Okay, this part here, bit better production on that side of it. Just clean those roots up a bit. Okay, and again, clip off our fruiting tubers. I'm just trying to get where the fruiting tuber joins onto the sprouting tuber, just cutting it off there. Tidy all that up. Now you can see just here we've got last year's sprouting tuber that's gone in, and that's starting to break down. But off that, we've got this little piece here, which is the sprouting tuber that hasn't sprouted. This one here, which is the sprouting tuber that produced. And this one here, that's the sprouting tuber that produced. So out of that one plant, we're going to have 3 plants next year. They tend to produce better in later years than they do in the first years. And this section here was also off that. So again, there's the part that went in the ground. There's a section sprouting, there's another section sprouting, there's another section sprouting. So off the one plant, we're going to end up with 6 new plants for next year. So that's one section out of this one. And we still have this lot. So again, we've got a bunch of vigorous sprouting sections that are ready to go back in for next year. And so what we're going to do is put them into storage. And now this one here's got a bit of damage on it. When they've got damage on them, you don't want to keep them. So let me just rinse that off. Okay, you do take the peel off when you use it. So we'll quickly do that. Now at this stage, when they're fresh out of the ground, they're not going to be too sweet. The sugar sets in them over time. It's got a nice, crisp sort of texture to it. The flavour, I'd call it a cross between a carrot and a Japanese pear, a nashi pear. Certainly not bad. There's no sweetness to it at the moment. As I said, it's got to store to get that sweetness. So I'm going to take that one inside and peel it, and I'll knock out the rest of these and get them harvested. Alright folks, next day, because it did get pretty dark and late. Also, I wanted to leave everything sit for a day, just so any cuts could heal, and that sort of thing. Now, we're not going to use the material that came out. As you can see, it's full of partial tubers and roots and that sort of thing. This stuff is going to rot, and that's not what we want. So we're going to use some clean potting mix to put it to store our growing part. So bag in brand new potting mix. Now you can of course use sand, sawdust, anything like that. This has a bit of dampness to it, which is absolutely fine. You don't want it completely dry because it's going to suck every piece of moisture out, but you don't want it soaking wet either. Okay, so now we're just going to get the growing sections, basically just sit them with a stalk that's been cut sitting up. Ideally you don't want them touching too much, so a little bit of space. You know, a little bit of space in there, so if something does start to rot, it's not going to propagate through the whole bag. So as much as we can, we'll open some space up. All right. Okay, we just cover them up like that. Just that little bit of shoot hanging out of the top, and they are ready for storage. So they're going to go in my storeroom, which is pretty much an outside room, and it's going to stay pretty cool in there. They will sit in the cool environment through the winter time. Once they start to sprout, or in spring, then they're going to come out, get planted up properly in some fertilized growing medium. So that's our growing section. And there is our harvest of edible tubers. As you can see, that's the one I actually cut last night to try a bit off. That's healed over, it's dried up nicely. This one will get used because it's got that little cut in it there. So I will use that one before it gets a chance to set. Now for the rest of them, that one's got a split, but again, it's healed in there. The cut from last night's healed. So what they're going to do now is they're going to go sit on a windowsill. They're going to sit on the windowsill for 2 weeks, and that gives them a chance to dry down a bit. They lose a bit of moisture, and they're going to gain some sweetness. So that's what we're after. We're after the sweetness back in them. Again, the sweetness comes from something called inulin, which isn't readily digestible by the body. So you get the sweet taste without having the effect of the sugar on the body. So it's a wonderful thing. So yeah, these are going to go sit on the window. They're going to sit on the window for a couple of weeks. let them dry out a bit more, make sure they lose the moisture that they want to lose, and then they're going to go in a cool dark place inside. So for me, that's in my laundry, in my pantry. They're going to sit in there and they will hold a bit in there. If you've got them fresh, like I've got to use this fella, they will hold for a couple of weeks in the fridge, but they won't hold a lot longer than a couple of weeks. So fresh, just a couple of weeks. If you sun dry them, they will last for a bit longer, and you can then store them out of refrigeration. All right, so there we go. That is pretty much my Yacon harvest for the year. I will do some cooking videos with them. I didn't get a monster harvest, that's for sure. But if you saw the little growing tubers that I started with, I've got a fair bit of weight back from those. And I now have some massive growing tubers to go in next year. And as I said, the return gets bigger each and every time. So next year I should get a bigger return back. Hopefully they'll set some bigger tubers. They had some adverse growing conditions this year where they missed a bit of water and that sort of thing, and it set them back. So hopefully next year's going to be a better year for them. You know, they haven't set the world on fire. They haven't got, you know, huge massive tubers, which some people do grow. But I started from very small growing tubers, and I've now got huge growing tubers to go back in for next year. All right, thank you very much everyone for watching, and bye for now.